Okay, part 4 of answering all of your amazing questions. So this one's going to focus on some of the logistics questions that people asked as well, or no, I'm sorry. It's going to focus on the alignment of that K through 12. I don't have a ton to talk about on this, so it should be shorter. And then the other questions that you guys asked. So they were all so good. I want to make sure I'm answering them all for you, and I think this will be helpful for anybody. So alignment. Okay, so do the elementary teachers in your district practice choice? So I would say, like, I know of one teacher in our district who focuses on a tab model. He does a lot of like game related, like leveling up, like skill builders, and then you get a badge and you level up, and you can create from that. I don't exactly know how he structures it. We don't get to spend a lot of time. Our district is very large, and so we don't get to spend a ton of time with the lower levels. I would love to have more time to find out how they structure. I really don't know that much. I just know that he is explicitly like, I teach in a tab-based kind of setting. As far as choice, again, I would say, like, again, maybe you need to think about how you're thinking about choice. Maybe it's just that they maybe use less choice or more structured teacher-directed choice, probably. What's the best way to start a choice-based program for middle schoolers? I don't know if I have these answers. I will tell you, I am not a elementary or a middle school teacher. I do love middle school. I feel like anything that can happen in high school can happen in middle school. I think anything that happens in elementary can happen in middle school. I think those things can all kind of integrate within. I think the best way to integrate elementary and middle school is going to make sure that you are thinking again about what you want out of your practice. Like, what do you think is best for your students? What do I know and what do I value? And part of the what do I know is going to be like, how much content do I have to get through? Like, what kinds of media are important to expose my students? How many times do I get to see them? Like once a week, once a month? I don't know, right? They're all set up differently. Middle school, sometimes it's like, like trimesters, right? Sometimes you only see a student for a trimester if they elected for that or whatever it is. Some middle school classrooms I've seen have dark rooms, which is crazy. It's amazing. Some have nothing, right? When I create our curriculum, when my department creates our curriculum or looks at high school, we assume that students have not received any art since 5th grade. And even that, we believe that the exposure is pretty limited because they only see them, how often. So we try to assume at the high school that we're teaching a student who maybe has very limited exposure to art. So the best way to start a choice-based program for middle schoolers is probably to go back to what do you know and what do you value, figure out your goals and outcomes, and then go from there. That's my main advice for that. Is it appropriate for high school? Is this only appropriate for high school students? Can this be done at middle school level? So again, way I structure this is absolutely just for high school because that is how mine is. And even still, it's for content specific. So at my old school in CPS, I taught art survey, I taught a mixed media class, and I taught a photo 1 class, right? So art survey is literally, and they were all year-long courses, totally different, So an art survey, I really enjoyed. I got to teach them all like a little bit of everything, and what I kind of structured it by elements and principles. And then from there, we expose different media. I mean, really how you go about it is going to be how it's structured for you. And I wish I could say like, this is how you should do it. But ultimately, everything that you do should really be based on your own self-reflection of your school situation. You mentioned that this process takes time. Do you think that this could work in a middle school classroom where you have students every day, 9 weeks? Yes! Okay, what I meant by the process takes time is that the process for you in establishing your studio environment and creating that and figuring out what's going to work and not work is truly, that's what takes time. It has taken me, this is going on my 7th year, 6th year, or something like that, 7th year of doing this. And I will tell you what, I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure out what's going to work best. Yeah, I have a lot down pat now, but as I mentioned in my grading and assessment, I'm still like, okay, now now what? Or now what do I see needs to happen from level 1? Or I need to integrate more mixed media somehow in all these different things. So yes, that takes time. Change is not overnight. Some things are, right? But the big change, the big shifts in education, in your classroom, in your department is going to take time. As far as being able to do it seeing kids every day for 9 weeks, yes, you're just going to have to probably scale down what it is that you want to teach, right? So I have kids for, I guess, 20 weeks, right? And they do a lot. But in 9 weeks, you're going to have to scale that down even more and figure out, again, what is your priority? What do you want out of that class? How difficult do you think it might be to introduce choice to elementary age students? Not at all. In fact, students that are younger have less fear of taking risks, and they are way more interested in exploring and playing. And so I think it's great to establish that at an early age. I think, personally, the more we can provide an inquiry-based exploratory, experimental kind of practice, the more actually the anxiety less anxiety they will have when they get to high school. One of the biggest things that I see in my high school is that anxiety level, that pressure. And I'm like, really, ultimately, and I know because I take this into my own kids as well. I have kids, my own school, elementary age kids, and I think they have to do this and they have to do that to get ahead. No, really, I just need to talk myself off a ledge. That's what our society, that's what I grew up with. That's what our society is saying. There are people out there that have, master's degree. Like, look at me. Okay, I have a master's degree and like I'm an art teacher and I love it and I do it and whatever. And I'm not making very much money, right? If you want to count that as a success. But other people who like have a bachelor's degree are making like way more money than me in the corporate world. Whatever. They're like maybe vice presidents or presidents or whatever they are, right? I'm just saying that I guess if we can just stop and rethink the way that we teach and help our students manage learning and their process of learning at an early age about taking risks and how learning really should look, as opposed to it being like, this is how you do it, and if you don't do it this way, it's wrong. I think that's setting kids up for the wrong learning process, if that makes sense. Okay, do you have any suggestions for how this could translate to elementary kids? There are a lot of resources out there. I am not an elementary teacher, so I don't want to say how it should be done. So there are a ton of resources. I think Rebecca mentioned about a couple webinars that have been done on the younger ages. There's a lot of great people out there talking about that. If we are remote, which materials are essential for seniors who are building portfolios for colleges? I should have put that in the COVID section. I will talk about that maybe in a little bit. Sound good? Okay. And then I just want to address a few other questions that I wasn't sure where to put. So what app are you using to create your slides? So I'm assuming, okay, so two things. One, the slides for my students are Google Slides. My slides for my presentation were through Keynote. So I use Keynote on my Mac. They have great animations. I wasn't able to do that for the webinar because they have to use PowerPoint. So I took my presentation in Keynote and then took images and then pasted those into PowerPoint. I teach in an IB school, and I think choice learning would be fabulous for an IB school. I agree. Do you have any experience with this? So I've never taught in an IB school. I have observed a couple IB programs. I agree. I don't think I have specific feedback on that because I need to do maybe a little more investigating into the requirements or expectations for IB. So that's International Baccalaureate Program. But I absolutely think that would fit perfectly in there, and I would probably use, because I think there's a lot about process and process learning. I think a lot of visual journaling and sketchbooks are going to be really important in that program. What's the difference between choice-based teaching in art and do what you want and how you want? How to make students to meet progressions of learning. So I do not that's the stigma, is do what you want, how you want. It's not like that. I will tell you that I give a lot of feedback and support, and all that scaffolding I've done helps my students get to the point where they can make those choices. But when they get to their artwork, it is a lot of like, do what you want, how you want, but it's not really like that, right? So they have a proposal that they have to propose. We talk about constraints and limitations, and they can't just use any material that they want. It doesn't work. Now, I will tell you that there are some students out there that have really, like, they don't take feedback, right? We know that. They don't want to hear it. They want to do what they want to do and how they want to do it. So I guess when it comes to the artwork phase and they say to me, no, Mrs. Taylor, I want to do this. And I would say, okay, but here's some things I'm seeing and I want you to think about. And then sometimes they still be like, nope, I'm still going to do it. And I'm like, okay, so I know, like in my head, right? I'm like, I know that this won't work. I absolutely know that this is going to be a disaster, from my experience, from doing this for so long, right? And I have to stop myself. It's that control piece again. I have to stop myself and say to myself, well, this is their learning process. They're still going to get the feedback and the outcome at the end. If they create something and it turns out great, good for them for proving me wrong. Okay? If they create something and it's a total failure, I want them to be able to assess that for themselves and then reflect on that and be explicit about that. Hey, I thought I could make this work. I really wanted to. I didn't listen to feedback. I was more interested in kind of pushing forward. But you know what? I learned that I need to either get more feedback. I learned that I needed to do more practice to try something first. I learned this, and next time I will X, Y, and Z. So to me, it's not, again, I don't feel like my students believe that they can do whatever they want. I think that they feel like they can achieve whatever they want. I tell them that, like, if you want to achieve something, I will help you do that, but there are constraints and limitations with anything. And in my classroom, I've had students make some really wacky things. So again, I keep using the jewelry metals example. I know not everybody's familiar with that, but it's probably the most freshest on my mind. So I've had students, make some really cool sculptural pieces that I was like, I totally didn't think that that's something that they would do or whatever. And I say, that's their artwork. If that's how they want to express that and talk about the function. And again, I want to be in their head. I don't want to just limit them and say you cannot do that. They still have to have a high level of craftsmanship. That's all part of my my rubric and my feedback. So I hope that kind of answered that question. It's more of a stigma, I think, than, and maybe it's in a situation where choice or tab has gone wrong, like where a teacher was not super experienced, didn't really understand how to scaffold or prepare students properly, or is still working through how their particular students have, how to meet those students' needs, so that they can create work that is authentic to them as well as meaningful and technically solid. So that's kind of my thought on that. All right, so in the next video, I will talk to you, probably have a real conversation about COVID. Okay.